Hoki mai no, thanks for joining us on AM this morning. It's 10 minutes to 8 now. National leader Christopher Luxon will review Easter trading laws if the party gets into government. He said over the weekend. He's previously said on AM that retailers should be given the choice of whether to open or not. Well, Prime Minister Chris Hipkins is with us this morning. Thank you for being with us, Prime Minister. I see that your Workplace Relations Minister has said that Luxon's call to review these laws is pathetic. Do you share his view on that?
When this last came up, I voted against allowing wholesale trading on Easter, on Good Friday and Easter Sunday. There are only sort of 3.5 days of the year where shops are restricted from trading, and I don't think that that's necessarily an undue burden on businesses. It does guarantee that most New Zealanders for a couple of days of the year are going to have an opportunity to spend some time with their families. It's normally the subject of a conscience vote when it comes up in Parliament. That's always been the case for the National Party. They have some relatively staunch, conservative Christians who typically have voted against allowing trading over the Easter break. It's ultimately a matter for them. But I don't think it's an undue impost on business.
Okay, so no review under a Labour government.
No, certainly not something that we're proposing.
Okay, but the review that is going on today, I believe, is around COVID settings. Are we going to find out today whether that 7-day isolation period will be reduced or taken away completely?
Cabinet will make decisions on that today. It's always a finely balanced set of decisions. So we have to, on the isolation period, we've got to weigh up a number of things. We've got to weigh up the potential impact on case numbers. But we also do weigh up the impact on employment and on the labour market. So one of the challenges here is if you have to isolate, then obviously you can't go to work. That has a labour market implication. But on the other hand, if you go to work with COVID-19 and you give it to a whole lot of other people, that can also have a labour market implication. So if we think, I was Minister of Education last winter, and we had a number of instances where schools saw a spread of COVID-19 through their classrooms. A whole lot of teachers ended up getting it, having to take time off work. And in some cases, schools struggled to stay open during that time, which meant parents ended up having to take more time off to look after their kids. So these are all the kind of things that we've got to weigh up and make sure we're getting the balance right here.
So people can still isolate, right, if they have it, and without it having to be a mandatory period? Or are you saying that actually, unless there is a mandatory period in law, people won't do it and we won't trust them to do that?
Well, we can have recommendations. We have recommendations at the moment. If you get the flu, then we recommend that you stay home. A lot of people don't, and as a result, a lot more people get the flu than would need to if everybody stayed home when they had the flu. So we have to accept that if we remove the mandatory restrictions, more people will go to work with COVID-19 and more people will get it. So those are, we get some modelling on that gives us an indication of what the effect might be. We'll work our way through that, and then this afternoon we'll have a bit more to say about that.
But currently, do you believe that COVID needs to be treated differently to the flu, and that, as you say, there is no mandatory period for the flu, but COVID there needs to be?
It's still one of the major pressures on our health system. Whilst I know a lot of people now have moved on from worrying about the global pandemic on a day-to-day basis, the health system still deals with the reality of it on a day-to-day basis. It's one of the major causes of people being admitted to hospital, one of the major causes of pressure on the health system. So we do still have to factor that in, and of course we've got to factor in the fact that there are still vulnerable people out there who, if they get COVID-19, the results for them are going to be different for the results that the majority of us might experience.
Let's talk about this defence deal between Australia, the UK and US. We know it as the AUKUS alliance. Is New Zealand in any way discussing joining that alliance?
So the nuclear-powered submarines deal, which is the sort of centrepiece of AUKUS, is not something that New Zealand is going to be involved with. But the partners concerned, Australia, the UK and the US, are important security partners for New Zealand. So we continue to talk with them about other areas where we can work together. And we haven't made decisions about whether there are other parts of the AUKUS arrangement. So there's a second pillar, for example, that deals with communications. We haven't haven't made decisions about whether or not that's something that we would be part of, but the nuclear submarines part of it's clearly not something that we're going to be involved in.
Okay, but if we are considering joining a part of AUKUS, be it non-nuclear part of AUKUS, ASEAN countries, China has vehemently come out against the AUKUS arrangement and has expressed so to our own foreign minister. Isn't the risk here that join AUKUS or on nuclear agreements or not, you're either in the club or you're not, and that's how they will see it?
Well, at the moment you're talking about a hypothetical question. So as I've said, the government hasn't made decisions on any involvement in AUKUS at this point. And so that is at the moment just pure speculation.
Is it not concerning to those countries that we are already considering it?
New Zealand's international foreign policy remains the same. We're an independent country. We make decisions that are in the best interests of New Zealand. We have a number of important relationships. In some cases, those relationships come into conflict, and clearly we're in a position at the moment where there is heightened geostrategic tension around the world, and New Zealand will need to navigate its way through that carefully, as we always have in the past and as we'll continue to do.
Because don't we run the risk too of not joining the alliance, so not being part of the defence technology and the surveillance that is going to be shared between our defence partners?
Well, if you look at the security arrangements that we already have with the US, the UK, Australia, and of course the other partner in the five group of countries, Canada, that's incredibly important for New Zealand. We continue to be part of that, and where there are new opportunities for us to continue to work with those countries, then we consider those on a case-by-case basis based on what's in New Zealand's best interests.
This week, Te Pāti Māori have reportedly said that they're going to contest both general seats and Māori seats, which is very interesting because based on recent polling, there's a very real likelihood that Te Pāti Māori will get more seats, that they could potentially become the kingmaker in this election. Have you had any discussions with the co-leaders recently?
Oh, look, we're going to be competing vigorously in the forthcoming election for every vote we can get, and we're very proud of the work that we have done in the Māori electorates and very proud of our local Māori electorate MPs who are going to be competing vigorously to get themselves re-elected, and they'll have the full support of the Labour Party in doing that. We have a relationship with the Māori Party in Parliament. Those are different things. You can compete in an election campaign and then you can work constructively with a party either before or after that. That's the nature of MMP. That's what New Zealanders voted for when they voted to have a proportional representation system.
Have you met with the co-leaders recently?
A couple of weeks ago, and we had a reasonably, constructive conversation. I'm confident that we can maintain a good, constructive working relationship until the election, and then, of course, the voters get to decide what sort of relationship we have amongst the parties after the election. You
spoke about competing vigorously, and I think back to 2017 when Labour candidates in the Māori seats were taken off the general list. So for people to get their candidates into Parliament, they had to really support them in those electorates, and it was certainly competing vigorously. Would you be open to doing that again this election?
That's ultimately a decision for the Labour Party as a movement, and that decision hasn't been taken at this stage.
Okay, it got pretty bitter. Would that be something you'd support?
Look, obviously, I think you can compete and you can campaign, but you can do that positively. That's what we'll be aiming to do.
King's coronation invites have gone out. Prime Minister, did you receive one?
I have received an invitation, and I hope to be in a position fairly soon to indicate what my plans are around that.
And is your plans include travelling to the UK, taking him up on that invitation?
Look, as I said, I'm not making that announcement today, but I have received the invitation and I'm looking on it very favourably.
Okay. And what do you think New Zealanders should do to mark the occasion here? Of course, it'll be Sunday, May the 6th.
Yeah, we've been working with the palace around how they think that the King would like to see the day recognised in New Zealand. One of the key things that we're going to be doing there is some tree planting activity. That King Charles is a very avid environmentalist, very keen to continue that in his new role, and so we're looking at how we can mark his coronation with some tree planting across the country.
Okay, and just how long will you be in the UK for the coronation?
Well, obviously, at the moment there's a lot going on at home, and so any international travel that I do this year will keep in mind the fact that we've got a lot happening here, and of course it's election year too. So I won't be doing a lot of international travel this year, and where I do need to travel because it's the nature of the job, they'll generally be reasonably quick trips, I would think.
Just a short trip to London. Prime Minister Chris Hipkins, appreciate your time. Thanks very much.